Yeah.
She's just the right person for just the right time.
Yeah.
Just the right place.
All right, here we go. Hold on 1 second. We got offline. Everybody's getting back in.
Sorry, I didn't mean to distract. Ron, this makes me feel better. I know it's not just me.
No, technology, it's supposed to make our lives easier.
It works. It's great.
Yeah, when it works. Like Pat said, I've been in a situation like this where you just song and dance, you draw pictures, interpretive dance, you shadow puppets,
And
whatever.
puppets, yeah.
to do it myself. That's fine.
And so how are we gonna, are they?
All right, can everyone hear us? Nikki, can you hear us? Give me a thumbs up. All right, we are so sorry, y'all. We are having some major technical issues over here. Good old Wi-Fi is not working. But we are going to continue, and you have the floor, Mr. Pat.
Okay, very much. Hey, thanks, Parker. And if at any point in time anybody's having problems hearing me, somebody wave or do something, okay? And to get the charts synced up,
Are we good here, or you want to keep going?
just we're good on this. Let's stay on this one. So we talked about building the foundation. It's a unique time in our lives. With this inflection point, we don't know what the future is going to bring. Now is a really good time to take a hard look at our foundation, make sure we've got the right foundation to accommodate for the changes that are in front of us. There's a guy named Alan Mulally, who you may not recognize the name. He was the CEO of Boeing Commercial, and then he was the CEO of Ford. He's attributed with the turnaround of Ford in about a 5-year period. And Alan always says that a leader's unique role is to pull everyone together around a compelling vision, a vision for the future, the strategy, the goals, and the plans to achieve those goals, and that only the leader can do this. So my question for you all is, are you going to be proactive in shaping the future of your organization, or are you simply going to follow the competition? There's a great hockey player named Wayne Gretzky. He said he doesn't follow the puck. He skates to where the puck's going to be. So what are you going to do? Follow the puck or skate to where the puck's going to be? And you're going to have to help me with the charts. Thank you. Before we leap off into creating a vivid description, let's talk about some of the basics. First of all, do you have a realistic assessment of where you are in your business? And the first question of that realistic assessment is, why are we in this business? What business are we in? And usually when I ask the question, what business are you in, I get a very narrow answer, an answer that really limits the potential of the business. There's a guy named Lou Holtz who has some great motivational speeches, and he talks about people not understanding what business they're in. And he said if the Pennsylvania Railroad had understood that they were not in the railroad business, but they were in the business of moving people from point A to point B, they could have become the Pennsylvania Airline and still been in business today. So if you define your business too narrowly, then you limit your business. The environment's changing very rapidly. How are you going to evolve with that environment? The economic, political, cultural, and technical changes that are going on are dramatic. And so are the social changes that are going on. All of those are going to affect your business. So when you talk about where are you, it's where are you in today's context. Can I have the next chart, please? So we're going to talk about building a long-range plan. And I'm sure people are saying, well, why do we need a long-range business plan, especially in a small business? First of all, the process of creating the plan is a disciplined process that makes the leader and the team focus on what is really important in meeting the customer's needs, and to ensure that they're going to be able to satisfy those customers' needs and create value. People will pay a premium for value. On the chart are the elements of a good long-range business plan. Building the vivid description of the future, the values, the mission, the strategic goals, the strategy, the business plan, and how you manage it. We'll take a minute and examine each one of those in a little bit more detail. In 2004, I was given the privilege of being the president of Boeing Defense Services. It's about a 16,000 person organization spread over about 160 locations. We had 129 programs valued at $50 million or more. What I didn't realize is I'd inherited a mess. We had 5 major contracts in reach forward loss. We had unhappy customers, including the White House, because one of our products was Air Force One, and we were late getting one of the Air Force One products out of mod. We had labor union issues, both blue collar and engineering labor unions. Vision, who had time for a vision? We were trying to figure out how we were going to get by the next day. So I called a couple of friends of mine, a guy named Bill Bellegarde and Steve Rayner, who had written the book Shaping the Future, and chatted with them, and they assured me that I needed to go back to the basics and build the foundation. And that was going to be my only way out of this problem. So they came in, they fully engaged with our team. We built the process you're going to see today. They helped us build a solid foundation. And how did it go? I'll share that with you at the end. But if you look at the quote on the bottom from Stephen Covey, he tells this great story about this group that's out in the woods, really deep woods, really thick woods, but their job is to clear a path through the woods. And they're all systematized. I mean, they've got all the modern systems. They've got machete sharpeners, machete carriers to carry the machete forward to the cutters. They've got shifts of cutters. So when a cutter cuts the exact number of minutes he ought to be cutting for peak efficiency, they switch out. I mean, it's a really well-organized operation. And the leader's really happy. He's watching this whole system just hum away, and he decides to climb up on the nearest tree to see how the road's progressing. And he gets up on the top of the tree, he looks out, he turns pale, he comes down and he says, "We're in the wrong forest." How many of us have been in the wrong forest? We're doing all the right things, but we don't have the right vision for where we're trying to go. So I always thought that was an important lesson from Mr. Covey. Once you've got a good vision, and a vision is not a bumper sticker. A vision is a vivid description of the future state that you aspire to have. The next thing you need to develop is a set of core values, because your core values are going to do a lot of good things for you. They're going to help bring your team together around this common bond of working together. They're going to help you make good decisions when times are tough. They're going to do all kind of good things for you. I can remember in my very first executive assignment, I got confronted with a very difficult issue. I'm a brand new vice president, and I get this group of people from contracts and legal coming to my office, and they've got this letter for me to sign because one of our customers has got a warranty issue and they want it done for free, and we're saying they've got to pay for it because it's out of warranty. It's a good customer. Matter of fact, one of our best customers, and they needed the product. But after being sort of coached by the lawyers, I reluctantly signed the letter. On the way home, I was listening to a motivational talk by Lou Holtz. And about halfway through the talk, he started talking about 3 questions he asks of his recruits. And he thinks the recruits ought to ask of him. 3 questions he thinks that friends ought to ask of each other and spouses ought to ask of each other. He wrote these down in chapters 8, 9, and 10 of his book, Winning Every Day. And the first question is, can I trust you? Because trust is the essential element of any relationship. If I can't trust you, you can't be on my team. You can't be my friend. You can't be my spouse. Because trust is essential. The second question is, are you committed to excellence, or are you willing to just get by? And probably the last time in our lives we were able to just get by was our sophomore year in high school. After that, we had to start getting serious. And then the last question came up, and I'm driving home at this point after I'd signed this letter, and I'm driving home in my pre-owned Oldsmobile. And he asked the third question. He says, do you care about me or just my money? Hit me like a brick. I pulled the car over, didn't have cell phones, but we had car phones. You all remember those big car phones sat in the console, pulled over, grabbed the car phone, called my assistant, and said, don't send that letter. I'll have a different letter for you first thing in the morning. So that night I wrote a letter and I said, without prejudice to the contract, we will have a field team there in 96 hours to fix the problem. And I sent the letter, and of course the contracts people were very upset. The lawyers weren't too upset because they like my without prejudice clause. But the contracts people were all upset. They said, we need to go talk to the president of the company. So we went and talked to the president of the company, and I explained the operational situation for the client. And the president smiled and looked at the contracts guy and said, you know, you're doing your job. But Pat's right. Support him. We always have to take care of our customer. We'll figure out how to sort that warranty issue out later. So I learned a valuable lesson from that. And that's if you have good values. And I adopted those three as my values: trust, excellence, and respect. If you've got a good set of values, they're a great way to test your decisions. Because if your decision doesn't match up with those values, it's probably not a good decision. So, by the way, Winning Every Day is a kind of fun book to read. It's a quick read, and Mr. Holtz has got a lot of wisdom. So now we know what business we're in. You know, we're not like the Pennsylvania Railroad. We understand we're in the transportation business. We're more like FedEx or Amazon. We really do understand that we're in this broad business, not just some subset of it. We understand our customers and our market, our competitors. We've got a clear vision, and we've got solid values to keep us on the right path ethically. Now, what's our mission? And I used to struggle with this. I used to struggle with, why does mission come at this point in the process? And I've got this former Marine mentality of a mission, which is take the hill. But I've learned that mission is something different in this context. You know, mission is having a passion for what you do, having a passion for your people, and being able to be competent in what you do, and therefore adding value. So if you're passionate about what you're in, what enterprise you're in, you really take care of your people. You're competent to do it, and you can add value not just to your business, but you add value to the economy. That's what your mission's got to be about. So mission statements have to be really clear, and they've got to have those elements in it. Now, that doesn't mean they have to be long. They could look like a bumper sticker and not be one. And I'll use my alma mater, which is Notre Dame, and their mission statement is, be a force for good in the world. And if you think about that, there's clear passion. If you've ever been around Father Jenkins, you'll know there's clear passion for doing good things in the world, because Notre Dame does more than just teach graduate and undergraduate programs. They've got satellite universities all over the world. They engage in the whole global sustainability issue with the Vatican. They're involved in many, many things, all of which are to make this planet and this world a better place. So the passion is there, the concern for the people. Again, if you've been in that environment, it's incredible. And then, are they competent to do it? There's no question about that. And do they add value? Now, every place except the football field where we can't ever seem to get past number 2 or 3 or 4. So we now know what we're going to do, but how are we going to do it? What are the most important things that we have to do to achieve this vision? And if you take the vision and let the vision define for you what your strategic goals are, then those goals become pillars that hold that vision up and allow you to achieve it over your planned period, which is generally about 5 years. An example from one of my clients, and one of you on this audience is going to recognize this. An example from one of our clients is a set of strategic goals that are based around profitable growth, high quality service benchmarked against industry standards, Customer satisfaction is measured by your customer. They're going to tell you whether they like what you're doing or not. Employee satisfaction is measured by your employees, continuous improvement, and a positive cash flow. I contend if you take that example and think about it, it hits all the things that are on the chart. It's the pillars, it's measurable on an incremental basis. It addresses all aspects of the business. It provides consistency of purpose. It really provides a good set of strategic goals. It's a good example. I also like the quote at the bottom. You all recognize that comes from Alice in Wonderland and the rabbit. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So it's kind of nice to know where you're going. So now we have our strategic goals. How are we going to achieve those? So we need a strategy. And the word strategy seems to really perplex everybody. Michael Porter, who's one of the well-known business writers of his time, said strategy is a creation of a unique and valuable position involving a different set of activities. Didn't tell me a darn thing. I don't think it told anybody a darn thing. So my definition of strategy is it's simply an articulation of how you intend to So we were talking about strategy, and we talked about Michael Porter's definition, which told anybody nothing. And I said, my definition is simply an articulation of how you intend to proceed. And you can have an overarching strategy, which would be a company-wide strategy of, let's say, I'm going to protect and defend my current core competencies, my current core products. I'm going to look for logical adjacencies so I can grow the business. And I'm going to have research and development working on a breakthrough technology that's going to discriminate me later. That would be the overarching strategy. The marketing strategy of how you're going to sell that then becomes the supporting strategy. So two different levels of strategy, but they're both strategies. And the difference between a strategy and action is strategy is the approach. Action is the plan to achieve that approach. So once we get to that point, we now have to figure out how we're going to take this 5-year long-range plan and break it down into incremental 1-year elements. The theory of the 5-year plan and the vivid description is that you know where you want to be in 5 years. You have a very clear picture. And if you walk backwards from that 5-year period, it will tell you the first things you have to do. So in year 1 of that plan, you know, if I don't do these things right now, I'll never get to that 5-year vision. A good example again would be, let's take the strategic goal of profitable growth. Well, your annual approach to that strategic goal is going to be revenue, a revenue goal, a cost of goods sold goal, gross margin, operating costs, net profit after tax. The most important thing about your incremental goals is that they align with your strategic goals and that they are realistic, attainable, and shared with everybody in the organization. You cannot manage a secret. Transparency is an imperative. And people say, well, no, I can't share those goals with my employees. Why not? Why don't you trust your employees? If you can't share the goals with your employees, there's some other problem we ought to be talking about other than your operating plan. Now, if you got a classified program, that's a different story, but that's the only reason I can see an exception. Again, I go back to my friend and colleague, Alan Mulally, who I worked with at Boeing, and the CEO of Ford. He went in and he had a very hostile environment in Ford when he first got there. And he said, let everybody know the plan. And they really resisted that. But Alan's pretty tough to resist. And he convinced everybody it was the right thing to do. And of all the big car manufacturers, Ford never took any of the government's money, recovery funds. And 5 years later, while the stock didn't get up to where Boeing stock was, it multiplied significantly from where it was. So now we've got our incremental plan. Now we have to ask ourselves, how are we going to take this company to market? Now, when I say marketing strategy, I'm talking about the big picture marketing strategy. This is that supporting strategy that goes under protect and expand your core business, look for logical adjacencies, find a breakthrough technology that's going to carry you into the future. And the marketing strategy, of course, is based on the notion that you're going to have to make money. And everybody gets confused. They talk about shareholder value. You mentioned Andy Taylor and his notion of take care of your customers or your employees, and they'll take care of shareholder value. He and I had that conversation over lunch several times. We absolutely agree that customer satisfaction is going to yield not just shareholder value, but stakeholder value. Because many companies, many small companies, don't really have shareholders per se, but they sure do have stakeholders. Their employees are stakeholders, their customers are stakeholders, this community is a stakeholder. And so if we can figure out how to take care of our customers will in turn take care of us. They're gonna give us the means to take care of our employees, to contribute to the community, to do all the right things. But you're not gonna achieve customer satisfaction. You're not gonna be able to sell your concept to the market if you don't have a solid value proposition. What is a value proposition? It is truly how you intend to bring value to the marketplace. And if you look at this chart on the lower left-hand side, it talks about operational excellence. Operational excellence is essentially, can you do the job? Can you build what you say you're going to build? Can you provide the service you say you're going to provide? Can you do it on time? Can you do it for the cost you said you could do it for? Are you getting first-time quality? It's all those things that make a good business. If you can't do that, you might as well stop right there, because that's the underpinning of this entire value proposition, is your ability to do the job. So if you're coming out of COVID, if you're a startup, if you want to restart and sort of, remake your business, You have to start there. Can I do the job? The next thing is, do I know the customer? And everybody says, well, yeah, I know the customer. These guys have been my, especially small businesses. I've worked with a couple small businesses and yeah, first name basis. We know the customers, their friends, etc. That is until somebody gives them a better offer. Okay. So the customer knowledge is not just the relationship with the customer. That's important. It's very important. But it's also understanding what the trends are. What are the customer's enduring needs? Well, depending on what your business is, but in a general sense, enduring needs mean what they think is a reasonable cost, good quality, timeliness. If it's a doctor's office, they're not waiting in a waiting room an hour and a half. That's not going to meet their enduring need. And then they've got emerging needs. Those emerging needs are changing all the time. And coming out of this COVID era, I don't think we all have a good idea what that's going to be yet, because COVID is a two-part disease. It's a medical disease. It's a social disease. You might even call it a political disease. Okay? And I'm not trying to be smart about this, be funny about this. It's just what it is. And so I think we're making significant progress on the medical disease. But we've still got the social and the political that's going to be slower in recovering than the medical. How are people going to react to that? Especially if you're in a business a restaurant business, a clothing store business, where you really rely on people coming in. Yes, you can do a lot of online shopping. You can do, pickup and delivery. But restaurants exist because people like a restaurant experience. Clothing stores exist because people like to be able to see the product, not just see a picture of the product. At some point in time, we're going to go back to those kind of enduring needs, but something still is going to have changed. And now, how do we adapt to those changes? I don't have the answers, but I know that question is a real question. So customer knowledge is that. We can talk about relationship marketing. That's good stuff, but it's essentially knowing what's going on in the customer's environment and what the customer wants. Once you have those two things, now you've got to figure out how you discriminate yourself from your competitor, because anybody who stays in the marketplace is going to have those two things, or at least to some level, they're going to have those two things. Now, we can have a breakthrough technology that makes us better than anybody else. Amazon. Okay. Can Amazon be replicated? You bet. Nobody's done it yet, but they can be. But right now, they've got a breakthrough technology. Fred Smith had a breakthrough technology almost 45 years ago when he started FedEx. Fred Smith doesn't have a breakthrough technology anymore. How does Fred Smith discriminate himself from DHL, from Amazon, from the U.S. Postal Service? That breakthrough technology is only part of your discrimination. Total client experience. If you're in a customer service business, a medical business, a medical, dental, physical therapy, something like that, total customer experience is going to be the breakthrough. If people feel like this is the best place for me to go, I'm going to get the best medical attention, I'm going to be treated like I'm important and like I care, the doctors are going to spend time, listening to me and talking to me, the support staff, when I walk in the door, I'm going to be made to feel welcome and wanted and not ignored. If they're running behind, somebody's going to explain to me why they're running behind. Those are the kind of things that create a total customer experience. Based on my experience as a customer, that's breakthrough. You don't get that everywhere. And when you see it, you love it and you want to have more of it. It could be simply that you're reliable, that they know if you call this particular company relative to your HVAC system, that they're going to be there. The person that comes in is going to be competent to do the job, and you're going to pay a fair price. That may be a breakthrough discriminator. But everybody needs to understand for themselves, what is that breakthrough discriminator that's going to make you number one or number two in this area, in that business? Because if you're not number one or number two, according to Jack Welch, and I happen to subscribe to that theory, you probably ought to find something else to do because you're not going to make money. So you're running along, you got everything all set, and now we're operating. How are we doing? How do you know how you're doing? How often do you check? What do you check? I contend you need a robust, repeatable process that yields positive, predictable results in your performance management system. There's certain things you ought to measure on a weekly basis. You ought to know what your costs are doing, how your schedule's coming, what your quality's like. If you have something that has a performance metric to it, how's your technical performance, how your suppliers doing for you? Are your suppliers getting what you need to you on time? And when they get it to you, is it right? And does it work? What's your risks? And what are you doing to mitigate those risks? And knowing when to ask for help. And I contend that those are things you ought to look at every week. And if you don't have the data to look at those things, you need to get it. Because if you don't know where you are on those things every week, by the time you figure out where you are, it's going to be too late. The monthly stuff, I'm sure most people do it, but I bet you do it quarterly and not monthly. That's your financial review. If you wait to quarterly, you got 3 months behind you in the year. And if you find out you're behind plan, you're 1/4 of the way gone. So if you look at your financials monthly, which we all ought to be able to do, then, and you compare that with your plan, and you look at the differences, and that's all you really have to look at is where are there differences between my actual financial performance and my plan. Then you can drill down on those differences and find out why they're not there and start making changes now, 1/12 into the year as opposed to 1/4 into the year. You know, people say it takes 6 data points to make a trend. I'm too impatient for 6 data points. 3 was about all I could tolerate. And I would start moving on 2 sometime, usually waited for the 3rd one. But if you use your financial dashboard that's going to give you your revenue, your cost of goods sold, your gross margin, you look at your operating costs, whether you look at that in sort of aggregate or you get into fixed and variable overheads and indirect and direct costs, depends on how big and sophisticated you are. All that matters is you understand what your operating costs are, and that yields you your net profit. Apply your interest, depreciation, amortization, and get your net profit after tax. You kind of know where you are. The second part of that's the most important part, which is understanding the why. Why did you get that way? And Harlan will talk about that some in section 3, and I'll talk about it more in section 4. I also think on a monthly basis, you ought to measure your customer satisfaction. And I told you customer satisfaction as measured by your customer. If you let your customer will tell you whether they like you or not. It's not just your Google rating. Okay. They're going to tell you on that, but you're also going to get people who just give you a bad Google rating because they had a bad day. What you really want to do is have some other rating system besides Google. And there are people out there who will provide that to you that will constantly survey your customers and give you feedback on how you're doing from your customers. Solicit feedback on the spot. Before the customer walks out the door, either the person let's use a medical office again, either the doctor or that receptionist as you're leaving, ought to ask you, run out of time,
Mhm.
ought to ask you how you're doing. And we also ought to do things like customer education and customer appreciation, to give them a customer forum, a roundtable, give people a way to give you good feedback. Don't let them stay angry. And the other thing is, if you get bad feedback, immediately contact them and find out why and find out what you can do to make it better. They're not going to change their rating. You're going to change your performance. Employees, they're going to tell you all the time. They're going to tell you with their absenteeism. They're going to tell you with retention. They're going to tell you with HR issues. Now, they're going to tell you with your culture. If you have an employee that's not happy, that he or she will start disrupting your culture. It's pretty easy to see. So there are so many signs out there. You want to be able to put your finger on the pulse of your organization. And the way to do that is pay attention, because your customers or your employees are always talking to you. Training and community service, I think, are the last two things you ought to track on a monthly basis. Because if you don't make community service a goal and you don't set aside budget to do community service, it won't happen. And if it doesn't happen and you're not part of the community is not going to embrace you. If you do, it will. And the quote here is from me. I was with the Boeing company. McDonnell Douglas got bought by Boeing for 23 years and ran businesses within those companies for 18 of those 23 years. And using this process, our teams never missed a business plan. And that's a team effort. It's one of the things that everybody's got to understand. This is a team business. And one of my great leader friends, a guy named Al Gray, who was a commandant of the Marine Corps, said, the only time I want to hear the word I is if you're confessing to a mistake. So it's a team business. How do you create that team? Well, Jim Collins says, in It's Good to Great, you just get all the right people and you put them all on the bus, you put them in the right seats, and they'll tell you where to go. Is it really that simple? I don't think so. Now, the leader, and again, only the leader, can create the culture and provide the systems to attract A players. Nick Saban is my example. Why does Nick Saban have the best recruiting class year over year over year at the University of Alabama? He's got the right culture, he's got the right system, and he's got the winning reputation. And people want to go play for him because they want to play for a winning team. The A players want to play for a winning team. Okay? If you use your vision and your values when you're hiring people, two good things are going to come out of that. One is they're going to get a good feel for what your company's really like, what you're really about. If your vision and values are something that you are really operating with, you're going to be telling them a lot about your company. The other thing is they're going to be telling you in their reaction to those vision and values whether they're going to fit in or not. I contend you don't just want to hire A players. You do want to hire A players. But you want to hire A players who are going to fit in your system and not disrupt your system. And that takes time. You want to do the same thing with promotions. I watched this happen way too many times in corporate America, where people got promoted for reasons that made absolutely no sense to me. And I look over and go, I have no idea. I mean, to very high places. I can't mention names, but I watched a person who had never run a business, had one project he had to run, failed to run that, was given a well-running business for 18 months so he could put a check in the block, and then given a very senior position, which he failed at. And I'm thinking, now why the heck did that happen? It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, Boeing paid the, Boeing, it was Boeing. Boeing paid the price for that. You've got to make sure that you're promoting the people who are going to embrace your vision and your values. If you don't, they will harm your company. Vince Lombardi. Love Vince Lombardi. I was around when Vince Lombardi was still coaching. That's how flipping old I am. Winning is a habit. Unfortunately, so is losing. If you stop and think about that for a few minutes, how do you break the losing habit? Okay. You got to have a total team. Everybody's got to be bought in. I remember when I was at Boeing and gave talks like this, I would always mention Chris Simmons. And nobody in the audience knew who Chris Simmons was. But Chris Simmons was the janitor who cleaned my office. Now, the people who came to visit me were admirals and generals and congressmen and staffers. You know, people came in there, and if my office, if the trash cans were overflowing and the table was dirty, and you know, they would look at that and say, "Damn, if his office looks as bad, what's the shop look like?" You know, if he can't even take care of his own office, what's this place like? Chris Simmons was vital to me to make sure that office was always ready to accept visitors. Every job and every company is vital, or you shouldn't have the job. Total team, one plan, one team, one set of metrics. Everybody knows the plan. And by the way, you connect all that to compensation, including Chris Simmons and his counterparts. So parting shots. I promised you I would share with you the results of my Boeing nightmare when I took over the services business, and we had reach forward losses. If you don't know what a reach forward loss is, it's essentially the finance people have already given up on the fact you're going to make any money, and they go ahead and write the losses off when it's convenient for them. Well, long story short, using this process with the help of Bill Bellegarde and Steve Rayner, who wrote this book, Shaping the Future, we turned around all the reach forward losses, which is rarely done. We regained customer trust. We grew from a $3 billion business to a $7 billion business in 4 years, and we maintained mid double-digit margins in the process. The system works if you use it. The other thing, especially in this day and time, and I've been talking about this for 20 years, but it's more important now than it was then. All of us are better than any one of us, and that means you need to think about diversity. And diversity doesn't just mean race and gender. Race and gender provide diversity, but you want diversity of thought. You want the diversity of thought that comes from the diversity of culture. I remember also when I took over that nightmare organization, my leadership team was, as they say, stale, male, and pale. Okay? When I left, we were a very diversified team. I had a Swiss guy who was raised in South Africa. I had my executive assistant was gay. We had 3 women on the leadership team and leaders in lead roles. I think we had 2 African Americans on the leadership team. And I also brought in some contrarians, people I knew who were competent, but were not yes men. I wanted somebody out there to challenge all of us. And our leadership team meetings went from monologues to fabulous dialogues. And we did so much better and made so much better decisions. We always had the values on the board. We always referred to those. And occasionally we'd have a few Donnybrooks, but those are okay. Donnybrook is an Irish word for a little bit of a fight. My boss at McDonnell Aircraft always said, actions are not accomplishments. We were in the TQMS era. All these wonderful things that screwed up life for people. And everybody wanted to measure the process. The Baldrige Award was for processes. Farmers Reward ruined more businesses than anything else I've ever seen. Measuring processes tells you nothing. Measuring the outcome of the process tells you everything. Measure your accomplishments, not your actions. And finally, if you want a new idea, read an old book. And here's a couple of writers anyway. Peter Drucker, the father of modern business. Michael Porter, I've talked about earlier. Jim Collins. Last guy is Ram Charan. It's spelled wrong. I apologize. I missed that. It's Charan. Ram was the coach for Goizetto when Goizetto was the CEO of Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola was struggling because all these other companies are now starting to take Coca-Cola out of the leadership spot. And Ram Charan says, you're measuring the wrong thing. And Goizetto said, I've been doing this for years. I know how to sell soft drinks. And Ram Charan said, that's the problem. You know how to sell soft drinks. Measure the percent of stomach. What percent of stomach does Coca-Cola get each year? And he said, where are you going? He said, sell something besides soft drinks. Ram Charan is a guy that took Coke into water, buying Minute Maid, buying Gatorade, which I think they subsequently sold, but buying Gatorade at the time. He's the one that took Coke into selling. Remember I told you about the narrow versus the broad description of what business are we in? Okay. Ram's the one who said to Goizetto, you're not in the soft drink business. You're in the business of providing liquid refreshment to people. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Anyone have any questions? Anyone online have any questions? All right, Mr. Jeff, questions?
No, it's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Pat.
Wow, Parker, thank you. And if anybody has any questions, you got my phone number. We'll send you a copy of the charts. The phone number's on there. Please don't hesitate to call. My email's also, I think, on there. Send me a note. Be happy to talk to you at any time. Thank you.
Well, once again, thank you so much, Pat, for that wonderful presentation. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And I do apologize for our technical issues. With saying that, we will be sending out the slides today to each of our participants and will be posted with our video on our YouTube channel. So please look at that. And then I do want to say another thanks to the Delta Community Credit Union for sponsoring this event. And please be with us for our next part, our number 3, part of 4, March 10th. So put that on your calendar for March 10th. And thank you so much. You have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Jeff, do you have a card?
I do, yes.
And Parker, can we get a list of who was on the